Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the Synastry Chart between Madonna and Penn. Now it's been a while since they broke up, but I've gotten multiple requests for their Synastry Chart. And if you need a Synastry Chart, my email is in the description box. So I'm going to get started on this. The interesting part of this is that there are a lot of different energies between the two of them. And I don't think it's one reason that they split up. I think there's a couple of different reasons. And not many people, or should I say most people, really don't know why they actually got a divorce. So I'm going to tell you what I found. Now, her Valentine conjuncts his North Node, and that's actually really nice. I just got done doing a Synastry Chart on my channel that I uploaded. That it's between Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani, and he has his Valentine conjuncting her North Node, which is wonderful. But in this case, the chart as a whole tells a completely different story. So this is a perfect example of why you cannot base your whole relationship on just one aspect, or actually even a couple or a few. You have to really take into account the whole chart. So her Valentine conjuncting his North Node at 0 degrees. This is wonderful because Valentine has to do with sacrificial love and devotion. And that energy, she will love him without bounds. It's so close to unconditional. And I think she probably does still love him. And that was the theme of the relationship for him. But his North Node, in his natal chart, he has the asteroids Blow, Hermione, and Fantasia, and Angers, all conjuncting his North Node. So this is one of the themes, or actually, in this case, a couple of different themes going on in his life. Blow has to do with failures and mistakes, which would make sense because her Valentine is conjuncting his Blow. Close proximity, but it's really more important that his Blow is conjuncting his North Node, because that can also mean the use of drugs, specifically cocaine. I don't know if he had a lot of problems with drugs or cocaine, but that's the energies that Blow represents. Also, Hermione is there, so he has a very hypnotic effect on people. Fantasia, through fantasy that has to do with the entertainment industry and movies. So he has a hypnotic effect in his life through fantasy, and there's also Angers there that has to do with angry. Having a temper. This is right here. People know that he has a temper. And because it's conjuncting his North Node with all those other asteroids, so that explains a lot of things that the public knows about that goes on in his life, because he is famous. Her Ceres conjuncting his Venus and Fantasia. Ceres is a love asteroid. It has unconditional energies about it, and it's conjuncting his Venus, the love planet. Fantasia is there. Again, there's fantasy. There's fantasy in this relationship, and he loves fantasy because it's conjuncting his Venus. Now, her Venus, Merlin, Union, Alma, and Amor conjuncts his Vertex and his Don Quixote. Okay, so this is jam-packed here. There's a whole bunch of different asteroids. They're all jumping up and down. They're holding hands, and this is the story that they are telling me. First of all, whatever asteroid or planet conjuncts your vertex from the other person, this will signify the energies that they bring to you, because the vertex is like a second ascendant. And it's a very important point in a Synastry chart. So these energies will come to you and you will feel them strongly. So her Venus is conjuncting his Vertex. Again, she brings him love. She brought him a lot of love so far. And her Merlin and Union is conjuncting his vertex. Merlin has to do with like waving a magic wand, like a magician. And she had a hypnotic effect on him. Union is there. The union of them together, the marriage that eventually happened. And her Alma is there as well. And that has to do with a very sort of soulful connection, soulful energy, a very important dynamic that brings also love as well. And more love. So this is very powerful that this is all conjuncting his vertex. Now, the interesting part of this is that his Don Quixote conjuncts his vertex. So what he attracts into his life, especially from other partners, is pretty much borders on the impossible dream. Things not working out the way you want them to. Not seeing things clearly as far as the relationship goes. Not all of the time, but in this instance, it really comes into play because her Don Quixote conjuncts his moon. Now, this is very important because the moon is, it's a luminary, very significant in synastry charts. And her Don Quixote is conjuncting his moon. It's on the loose side. It's at 3.5 degrees. And I usually cut off the orbs for asteroids conjuncting planets or angles at 3 degrees. But since it's conjuncting the moon, which is the closest luminary to the Earth, I'm going to let this one slide because her Venus is conjuncting his Don Quixote. So there's a double whammy going on here. Like I said, Don Quixote is the impossible dream. You think it's going to be this fairy tale relationship due to the Fantasia asteroids that I already explained and Merlin, but this is really just validating or adding to the energies of the other asteroids that I just explained. Now, her Vesta conjuncts his Lilith at 0 degrees. Vesta has to do with love and devotion and a reliability, and it's conjuncting his Lilith that has to do with raw sexuality, and it's at 0 degrees. So I don't think that she had any men on the side, and I don't think she cheated. Now I'm going to get to why I think they broke up. I don't have her birth time. It was listed it was listed at 7:05 a.m., I think, but the listing is not deemed accurate. There's a bunch of different times for her, and one of them was the one they picked on Astro Theme, and it's listed as DD, which is dirty data. So I'm trying to figure out if that particular time could be correct. And the reason why I'm saying that is because also I failed to mention her moon conjuncts his north node. So if this birth time is correct, this means that there's a very strong emotional bond between these two, and it can be hard to break. And it's a very karmic, it's a strong karmic connection with strong emotional bonds. So if her birth time is correct, the moon conjuncting his north node would come into play here. Also, let's get back to the reason why I think they may have broke up. Now, his Mars conjuncts her Dejanira, and Dejanira has to do with victimhood, and it's conjuncting his Mars. So there's fire and power that brings this energy into play. So she was a victim, but a victim of what? Well, his Atahualpa conjuncts his Mars. Now, this specifically has to do with drug addictions or drug abuse, and it's conjuncting one of his personal planets, Mars. So this is a very strong possibility. It's a little bit on the loose side, but it would validate his asteroid blow conjuncting his north node. So I put that in there as well. Now, his Ixion and Astarte conjuncts her north node. So this is the theme of the relationship for her. And this is tight because it's at 1 degree. Ixion on the extreme side has to do with murder. Obviously, she's still alive. Now, all asteroids, well, not all of them, but they can have varying degrees of energy. And with Ixion involved, this can mean bad boy behavior, lawlessness, going against the norms of society, or just in general, bad boy behavior. Well, that makes sense to me because also Ixion's holding hands with Astarte, and that means blow-ups and arguments from the bad boy, which would be him. It's conjuncting her North Node, the theme of one of the basic themes of the relationship for her. Also, his Pholus conjuncts her Vertex. This would make sense. Now, the Vertex is based on birth times. So if her birth time is correct, this means that he brings blow-ups and upheavals like storms and hurricanes into the relationship because Pholus has to do with explosions. Now, also, his Mercury conjuncts her Ishtar and Uranus. And Mercury, the thinking and talking planet, conjuncting her Ishtar, that has to do with blow-ups and arguments too. And sudden blow-ups and arguments because her Ishtar is conjuncting the asteroid Uranus, which is very unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. There's shocking surprises and energies that you don't see coming. Since his Mercury is conjuncting her Uranus and Ishtar, blow-ups and arguments. So far in this relationship, if I had to give a reason, I would say definitely way too much arguing. Too much arguing, bad boy behavior with blow-ups, and a very strong possibility, in my opinion, that there was she was a victim of his overindulgence in drugs and maybe alcohol. Allegedly. I have to say that. But now, here's another one. His swindle and Uranus conjuncts her sun. Swindle has to do with lying, cheating, or a basic not telling the truth, swindling. And Uranus is conjuncting her sun as well. So there's this just an unstable sort of relationship with the possibility of lying, maybe cheating. It could be because his Sedna, that has to do with betrayal, separation, and his Mad Hatter conjuncts her South Node. So she accepted these energies. She probably thought, well, that's just the way he is. Mad Hatter has to do with craziness and drama. And you create this big blow-up scene with all kinds of, like I said, drama. And you're creating the craziness, but you're blaming the other person. You're projecting the craziness of being crazy, if that makes sense. So there's just a volatile sort of energy going on with these two. And I just think that she couldn't take it anymore. And that's, Sedna's there. So there's betrayal and separation. And this could also mean that she decided, you know what, there has to be a separation and I just have to accept it. And, there's too much volatility because also his Okada conjuncts her point of fortune. Point of fortune is also based on her birth time. But so far, this is making sense and everything is the pieces are fitting together like a puzzle. And, the point of fortune is like a mini Jupiter. It magnifies whatever it touches. Okada has to do with violence and uproars. So I don't know if he's violent. I can't tell you that. But there's definitely blow-ups and craziness because in his natal chart, he has Mars squaring Pluto natally. That has to do with huge tempers, the loss of losing your temper, huge tempers, and that can ultimately become violent. Now, in their planetary department, her Mercury squares his Mars, 4 degrees, and that has to do with arguments. So here's more validation in the planetary department. Now, his Pluto conjuncts her Mercury, and that energy signifies? Well, Pluto has a very strong primal power to it. And since it's conjuncting her Mercury, this can mean that he wanted mental control over her or a domination over her, the way she thought, or just mentally, and the way she spoke. It was just, there's a strong control issue here going on with Pluto and him towards her. Now, his Jupiter conjuncts her Humpty Dumpty and Fantasia. So Jupiter magnifies whatever energy it touches, and in this case, there was a huge fantasy. The huge fantasy between these two that ultimately came crumbling down and could not be fixed, because that is the energy of Humpty Dumpty. If you're familiar with the children's nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So the fantasy of this relationship was ruined, and it could not be put back together, and it fell apart. And ultimately, what was left, I think, there is some love left. But once something becomes broken, sometimes you just can't put it back together. And that's the case between these two. So that's all I have today. And I hope you enjoyed this interpretation, and hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop. And I will be back soon. Have a nice day.